Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rebuilt Parish Podcast. We're so grateful that you're here with us today. Well, as we prepare for the holidays, we know that first impressions can be so important. Today, we've brought back Tom Corcoran, president of Rebuilt and pastoral associate at Church of the Nativity, and he's here to talk about something that is not a glamorous ministry, but one that makes a tremendous impact. Are you ready for it? We're talking about the parking lot here, people. Again, not very glamorous, but the impact this can make on first impressions, hospitality, and operations in your parish is tremendous. Join us inside the episode and we'll tell you more. Hey there, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the Rebuilt Parish Podcast.
Always good to be with you, Melissa.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the parking lot ministry? It's something that I know doesn't sound glamorous, but let's talk about that today.
Yeah, we're talking about serving families through parking, which is interesting. You know, what the story you told me that I didn't even know about, and it's something we don't do right now. We have to get back to doing. Is something about Chrissy, who serves on our Rebuilt team. She's in charge, with marketing, works with you in marketing. And so I did not know this, and we have to get back to this. So the story for Chrissy is her first time coming to Nativity. She had young kids, and we had something where if you put your flashers on, we would give you a spot up front. So we said, put your flashers on if you're new or if you have little kids, because we were trying to make it easier, for those of you who forget what it's like to have little kids. I mean, you got if you have a diaper bag, and you got maybe the car seat, and then you're trying to hold the little kid's hand. It's a lot to figure out. So we would park them up front, so to make it an easier access into our kids program. So there's a little insight on how parking ministry can make it easier. Now, as I mentioned, COVID, that was pre-COVID, and we have not brought that back post-COVID, and so we have to get back into that. I'm going to have to bring that back up to our staff here about, wait, what happened to put your lights on if you're new or have kids? So that's, again, it sounds like not much, but as I said, the parking for serving families or just, again, serving guests, as Father Michael likes to say, the message begins in the parking lot.
Yes.
Most 99% of churches, the first time people interact with you, they are driving to church. And so whatever interaction they have there is beginning to form their impression of the church.
And Tom, I'm so glad you started with that story, because when Chrissy told me how she first started going to Nativity after going to a different church, she said, it was just so relieving when I pulled in and I was able to get a spot up front, up close. Everyone was so welcoming, and it was much easier for her to get her kids inside. She just said that just was a game changer for her when it came, and it was a great first impression.
Yeah, that's like what you're saying there. It's about making that first impression for people, that we are prepared, we are organized, we're thinking about them, and trying to make the whole experience something that takes them on a journey. And again, we talk about the Mass as being a journey and taking people on a journey, but the journey does not start when Mass begins. Again, the journey begins when you arrive on the parking lot.
So, Tom, I'm going to ask that you take us back in time a little bit. When you and Father Michael decided, okay, now it's time to start a parking lot ministry at Nativity, what did that look like? What made you make that decision?
I think it's a lot of things we started. We saw some of these other churches had a parking ministry, and we thought we should have a parking ministry too. So I don't know, especially again going to with the Saddleback and I think Fellowship Church in Dallas, we saw how well organized they were, and North Point in Atlanta as well, how well organized. I think it's funny for me, like, I sometimes do parking ministry. I love doing parking ministry, actually, especially in the nice weather. It's fun to be outside. And I remember at North Point, them having I don't know if you can see me on here, but having kind of cool things to make it fun. And some guys had, we had some of these batons. Some guys had gloves, and they would do the gloves. And it was just, I don't know. So just seeing it at other churches and seeing that, again, and being preached by, we do say the message begins in the parking lot. I think we got that from Rick Warren, we stole so many things from him. So maybe another preacher. I don't know, but I think we just saw it in action, and like we could use that here.
Oh, I love that. Tom, I'm just picturing you in the parking lot right now with one of those light up batons telling people where to go. That's so fun.
I get into it. Yeah, you got like your tennis racket. You can do a tennis racket. You can do a baseball. You can do a golf swing. Do it behind the back. It's fun, And again, it's just trying to show we have fun here, and we. I think with all hospitality ministries, what you want to be communicating is, wow, like people show up to park cars here or to greet people. Like there are people invested here. That says something. What is happening at church must be important. And wow, so they're excited. They're ready for guests. They're ready for new people to come in. And wow, they're organized. Like this, they're organized and have thought through everything. So you're communicating all those things, again, right up front with the parking ministry.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And such a great point. We have fun here. People are invested here. That is telling them something without actually having to say anything. I love that. Well,
yeah, and that's, I think with a lot of ways we have to look through the weekend experience is that we are communicating, not with words, right? I think it's Psalm 19, right? The heavens are telling the glory of God, not with words, not with speaking, but we're telling the glory of God through our welcoming and through taking people through a whole experience of worship.
Yes, absolutely. So let's dial it in and let's talk a little bit about Christmas Eve. Tell us, why is it so important to have this particular ministry ready to go, ready to launch in time for Christmas Eve?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the pushback we get to parking ministries is having a parking ministry is we don't really need it. And they mean that operationally, like there's plenty of spots to park, there's plenty of places to go. But, and I disagree with that, by the way. I don't think, because again, it's not just about operations. If it was, it is about creating all those other things in an irresistible environment, creating fun and excitement. But on Christmas Eve, it's definitely an issue. You most likely have parking issues and things going on. As more people than ever come to your church, especially at that 4 o'clock time, right? It's like, for whatever reason, or if maybe some dioceses have moved it up a little bit, but whatever it is, that earliest time, the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock time, and then, you're 5 and 5:30, they're going to be crowded, maybe not as crowded, but everybody wants to go at that time. So to get the most cars on your lot, to welcome people as soon as they get there. So it might be at certain points, rather than making people, especially when people are getting there late, rather than making them circle around, you help them find a spot. You might be able to get more cars on your lot if you have a parking ministry team. That was early on for us too, I guess. Early on, I think we did it just to get started. But then we had parking problems. We just didn't have enough spots. And so we started using this was way back before we built the new sanctuary. We used the grass, and we figured out how to use that spot. And especially if it rained, it stunk because you couldn't use that. But we figured out how to like get in stadium park them and get more cars in. And at other times we figured other places on the campus we could get, if you could get 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, just any more cars in, again, because those cars represent people and getting people into the church. And again, when people go to church, they tend to bring their cars with them. So you need a parking plan. So on Christmas Eve, especially when you're going to have so many people coming, you'll be able to get more people on your lot if you have a parking ministry team. And again, help them feel good as soon as they drive onto the campus that you're taking care of them.
Definitely. And so, Tom, it tells them you're taking care of them. And it just makes me think of what you keep saying, like, that is their first impression, and the message starts in the parking lot. So you're getting all of these people Christmas Eve who maybe are infrequent churchgoers. Maybe they don't go at all except for Christmas Eve. So you're telling them right away, we care about you. We do things well here to serve you. And this is a place where you're welcome. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. I agree with all you're saying there, and again, it's all without words. And again, hopefully, you want them smiling, you want people, enjoying it, and that's what we have to be communicating to people who serve on the parking lot. That again, they are that first layer of welcome.
Definitely. So, knowing that they're the first layer of that welcome, let's give people some practical tips. How can a parish just getting started with a parking lot ministry? What's that first step they need to take to get started?
Well, I think the first step in anything is always the same, no matter what ministry you're trying to start. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So it's about trying to find a few people that want to lead it and are good at leading it, and so that have that heart. And again, usually it's going to be people who are kind of a little operationally minded too. They like thinking through traffic patterns or how people are coming through, but also, again, who have that welcome. So we would always say find two co-leads, at least two people that can help you get it started. So it always begins with those people that can help work it with you. I remember one of the mistakes we probably made, and I'm going to call him out because I don't think he'll mind, is Jay Goldshire, he's Jay's a good friend of mine. He's godfather to my one son, but we put Jay in charge, and Jay was the exact wrong person to put in charge and here's why. So I'll tell you who you're not looking for. And again, hopefully, I don't think Jay will be upset at me for Jay, but Jay's easily flustered, right? He's if people don't do what he tells them to do, you get upset. No, you want somebody a little easygoing, kind of thing. So yeah, Jay would get upset when people didn't listen to him, and we just threw him out there. So you want somebody who can be a little easygoing, someone though who can be thinking strategically about where cars should be going and that kind of thing. But and people who can help recruit some other people. We're talking right now about we're always going to have holes in volunteers or more opportunities to grow, and how do we mobilize volunteer leaders to help us find volunteer ministers? So someone who can help, people are going to want, and are going to want to be a part, and can attract other people to serve in the ministry as well. So always beginning with that. And then, there is somebody on the staff who's a director of operations or whoever look over his facilities and buildings, whoever you have there, or maybe it's somebody different, to begin looking at the traffic patterns at your church. There is, again, it sounds so simple, but there is ways people come in. So recently we were at a parish, and one of the things I do is just when we do a weekend observation, is I stand out there and I look at the way cars are coming in and the way people walk into the building, and start to try to imagine what would I do to make that feel better or smoother, right? How do you try to make that walk feel better? How do you protect and bring safety, a level of safety? So those are some things to be thinking about. Find those people and start having those conversations.
That's incredible. And that's something that they can start doing now. It gives them that time to put those leaders in place and then working with those leaders to find the right volunteer ministers. Such a great start. So what's next then? Once we have these volunteer ministers, what needs to happen next to get this parking lot ministry up and running?
Yeah, I would say, like you're saying, Christmas Eve, but focus on a particular mass. So to get the volunteers together. And you also, you want to focus, you can do all your masses, but again, it's easier sometimes to start something just at one place and learn and grow from it and what's going on. So once you get some volunteer leaders, invite some volunteer ministers to be a part of it, invite people be on the lookout for a weekend. You can make an ask, from the bulletin, or that usually doesn't get anything, but it's really more the one-on-one ask, or if there's any kind of ask from the pulpit, if you're interested in serving on this team. Then you're going to need some gear, simple gear. Again, we get the vest. And again, that's a really big part of any volunteer ministry. How are you kind of deputizing people? I say it that way. For our greeters, we have lanyards. You have T-shirts for our kids and student ministries. But for our parking ministers, there's going to be we have those, the orange vests that they can put on. We have those batons, those orange batons. You want to have those things. We have walkie-talkies. Again, these are kind of cool things. Who doesn't like a walkie-talkie? This is why it's a cool ministry. I love, so I would get a few, we have nicer ones now. You could start out with some cheap walkie-talkies because you do communicate in the lot and where you're going. And again, we'll be talking about, hey, we have different little it was kind of fun too, a parking ministry, nicknames will come, we call it the back 30. I don't know how that even happened, but that's the back part of the lot. We got the middle row, got the front row, there's just little, that vernacular will kind of develop as it develops. But so again, the first step again is get the core leaders, then get your, some volunteer ministers to start. The third is you want to give them the resources they need, whether again, vests, batons, walkie-talkies. Those would be the three big ones I would say you need, so they can be communicating with each other. And I think just set a date on the calendar. Say, we're going to start this ministry on this particular date. You got to set your own goals, right? We're going to get this many parking ministers and this many, by this date, and we're going to start it. Think through a kind of basic plan of how you're going to work your lot in the sense of, I would watch your lot a couple weekends and just feel how people walk there and what would make it a safer experience, what would make it a smoother experience. And I think you just launch it. I don't think it's too complicated.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's a nice, simple ministry that you can have a lot of fun with. I want to see these light up gloves that you were talking about, because if I were in the parking lot, I think that's what I would want, are the light up gloves. But
yeah, I don't know where North Point got those and what their reason was for that rather than that. Yeah, they were these fluorescent, I guess. I don't know if they lit up. They might have lit. It felt like they lit up.
That's so fun. Well, Tom, you've also shared a great story about the impact that a great first impression with a parking lot ministry can have. But I know you've got a personal story about a parking lot ministry that maybe rubbed you the wrong way a little bit. Can you share that one with us?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about parking, I didn't know Chrissy's story until you told me the other day. So there's been times when I've been, we talk about hospitality at a church and trying to convince people the importance of parking ministry. And so, this is many years ago now. But I think about 12 years ago or 11 years ago, it was 10 years ago. Anyway, so I was in Atlanta, and I was visiting my sister, and my whole family had driven down there at the time. I think we had 6 kids, so lightweight at that point. Anyway, we had driven down there, and then we had a day to hang out, and they wanted to go to the aquarium. And my sister lives north of the city, so we drive into the city, and of course, I had this big expedition at the time, big family, big car. So anyway, I'm driving into the city, and it's just weird. I'm not used to driving into Atlanta, and you're like, all right, where am I going to park? I was really thinking about that. And, we find a lot near the aquarium, and we pull in, and the parking guy's like, there's a parking attendant. He's like, how you doing, my friend? I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm not used to, again, being from Philly. You don't get how you doing, my friend? You get yo, you're in my way. It's just that's true. So anyway, I'm like, wow, he called me his friend. And it's funny, it's just, I appreciated that. And then he's like, all right, go down there. And he pushes me. And then I had to back in, and there's another guy there. And he's like, hey, can you back in there, or you can be able to make it? He's like, can you make it, my friend? I'm like, oh my gosh, I got another friend. Right. And so I'm nervous, but he's guiding me and helping me find my spot and get in. And so we go to the aquarium that day, and, we see all the stuff, and there's dolphins show at the end. And, we get in the car, kind of like you might do with your family sometime. You're like, what was the highlight of the day? What was your favorite part? And I really was serious. We're driving up to church because it's a Saturday, and we're going to go to Saturday night mass. And, my kids are saying the dolphin show or whatever. And I'm like, my favorite part of the day was parking. And I was not making that up. They made me feel so good. It was something. So anyway, we drive to a church, and we got there kind of early, which is weird because we never would, but we get there early, and there's a guy staring at me. He's in a golf cart, which is kind of cool, which is another thing we need for our parking ministry. We don't have. You could get a golf cart if you really want to soup up your parking ministry and look around. But anyway, and he's staring at me as I back in, and I'm getting all nervous. And, I finally back in, but I was like, oh my gosh, the difference of going to this lot, not a church, and the guys are really friendly and nice to me, and this other guy's staring at me as I'm backing in. I'm like, okay, the church there needs to be more like that. So that's just my little parking story of how parking can make a difference. And again, it seems so simple, but again, that's a lot of what we try to do. Simple things can make a big difference.
Absolutely. I mean, when I just think about how those 2 parking lot, they're not ministers at the aquarium, right? But those 2 parking lot attendants called you my friend, and you were like, oh, that just made my day, and kind of made it's scary driving in a city that you're not familiar with, trying to back in a big vehicle. What a difference they can make. And the same kind of feeling we can have when we've got parking lot ministers. We can make somebody's experience just that much better.
Yeah, and there are other cooler things that happen too. Again, people with batteries have died. Our parking, we have those battery chargers here at the church, and so your battery died, we'll help you restart your car. There's things like moms getting out and trying to like help. You could help the mom with this thing. There's just a lot of other ways to create that hospitality through the parking ministry. So again, it'll open up other possibilities as well.
Definitely. So we're encouraging parishes to start this with Christmas Eve, but why is it so important that we keep this going forward, and how can they keep that momentum going?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think earlier, it always starts with leaders and getting some volunteer ministers that would be willing to help you and build that team up. So invest in them. Again, we always say one thing, you can invest in one mass. You don't have to make it your whole weekend experience.
Yes.
Start at one mass, and then you can expand from there, expand your hospitality there. So just being focused and start to see, and then pay attention, start to see the benefit it's having. And then once you do one mass, expand to the next mass that would make sense. But it is all about those layers of hospitality, small things that make a big difference. To welcome other people is really to show love to them.
Definitely. And Tom, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Start with that one mass, get really good at it there, and then expand. I think so many times we want to do all of the things at all of the masses and make everything great at one time. But thank you for that, because I think that just kind of gave a lot of relief to some parishes out there who may think, oh my gosh, we have 3 masses a weekend. How can I do this at every single mass?
Yeah, shrink. The book Switch: How to Change When Change is Hard says it this way: shrink the change. Always make the change bite-sized or easy and accessible, so you don't feel like it's too much, and then do what you can handle. And as long as you're creating movement and momentum, the next thing will come, and you'll be more able to do the next thing, which is the next growth. Because as you and I know, Melissa, it's an ongoing thing, right? We're never done. It's not, we got to keep turning the flywheels, or we want to keep growing and maybe adding more to what we're doing. And there's more opportunities to grow, but we grow, we kind of consolidate the growth, and then we grow again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Tom, thank you. Any final thoughts on starting this parking lot ministry in time for Christmas Eve Mass?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I guess, 2 things. I think one, in time for Christmas Eve Mass, I would try to do that pretty quickly so you can have a little bit of practice. For us, we have Christmas Eve at the fairgrounds, so that's different than what we do each week here at Nativity. So it did take a lot more thought and planning because we never had. So if the first time you do something, it's going to take more thought and planning, and even then, the first time you do something, you're going to learn what we could have done better. So if you could even practice before Christmas Eve, that'll be a help a little bit, because we just learn by experience. And there's sometimes you try to learn by other people's experience as much as possible, but some things like how your parking lot works, you can only learn through your experience. So
right.
That's one thing. I had a second thing, and I've totally forgot what it is now.
Well, I'll
just
say,
I guess that people, again, I think it comes down to a lot of the stuff we talk about at Rebuilt. We say it's not rocket science. It's simple but not easy, as we say. And I think sometimes people overlook it because, that just seems too simple.
Right.
But again, I will use the book Switch: How to Change When Change is Hard. They have the quote about, as a church, we're we see a big problem. The big problem is people are not going to church. Mm-hmm. And so they talk about in Switch how our minds look for a commensurately big solution.
Right.
But they say it's not usually a big solution. It's a series of small solutions, sometimes taken over months, sometimes over years, some over decades. So again, this seems like such a small thing. Have a parking lot ministry. How is that going to change the world? How is that going to bring the gospel? It is really a series of small steps and small solutions, a long obedience in the same direction that over time adds up and makes changes. So you really are building the kingdom of God by starting a parking ministry. I really, truly believe that.
I agree with you. And again, I just think back to Chrissy's story, and I remember how hard it was bringing 2 little boys to Mass. And I just think, wow, what a different experience that must be to have that special treatment when you come into the parking lot, and how that must feel as a first-time guest, then turned parishioner, because it was such a great experience. I just think so much can happen from starting this one simple ministry.
Yep. Yeah. Just get to work.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so grateful for you, and we can't wait to have you back on the podcast.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. Always enjoy it.